Hello everyone, in this video I'll talk about the supercharging cost for a Tesla Model 3 for a long road trip. I've been using my Tesla Model 3 for about 4 months now, and 2 weeks ago we decided to take a long road trip to Chicago. So in this video I'll talk about all the supercharging costs, and then I'll compare that amount to the amount of money that I'll have to spend if I take the exact same road trip in a regular gasoline car. So without any delay, let's jump into it. I started the trip from New Jersey with 324 miles of battery range, and my first stop was 144 miles away, which was in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. When I reached Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, the remaining battery life on the car was 142 miles. So for a trip of 144 miles, I ended up using 180 miles of battery range. This of course is expected because the numbers provided by Tesla are not very accurate. Those are based on optimal conditions, and these were far from optimal conditions because it was pretty hot outside. I had to keep the AC on throughout the way to keep the cabin temperature at 70 degrees, and I was also using the autopilot feature on and off. We charged the car in Pennsylvania for about 30 minutes while we had our lunch, and then the total charging cost came out to be $13.86. We then started our journey with 321 miles of battery range, and our next stop was Grove City, which was about 217 miles from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. We got to Grove City with about 43 miles of battery life remaining, and from there we were able to charge the car to 341 miles, which was more than enough to get us to our next destination, which was Cleveland, Ohio. We stayed the night in Cleveland, Ohio. Unfortunately, the hotel that we stayed at did not have a charger, so I could not charge the car overnight. We had to start the journey next day with about 179 miles of battery range. On our way to the next supercharging station, we decided to skip one charging stop because there was more than enough battery life to get us to the following supercharger. But then we got stuck in really bad traffic for about an hour and a half. Luckily, the bad traffic patch was about 7 miles long, so we were able to use 25 miles of battery life to cover this 7 miles distance while keeping the cabin temperature at 70 degrees, and I was using autopilot for this bad traffic area. At the next charging station, we were able to charge the car up to 250 miles before continuing our journey. So even though we charged for a lot less miles compared to the previous stop, the amount of money was roughly the same for both of these charging sessions. For the last one, it was $23.52. So it turns out, of course, all of these different charging stations charge different amount of money per kilowatt hour. While we were in Pennsylvania, the amount of money was roughly about 34 cents per kilowatt hour. And once we got to Ohio, the cost jumped up to 42 cents per kilowatt hour. We then made one final stop to charge the car back to 321 miles. We did not have to charge this much to reach Chicago, but I wanted to do it anyway because I was planning on driving in the evening and early in the morning the next day, so we decided to charge it this much. The total charging cost for this final charging session was $19.25. This brings the total charging cost from New Jersey to Chicago to about $80.43. I then had to charge the car twice while I was in Chicago because I was driving around the city a whole lot. Of course, I did not include those numbers in these calculations. On our way back from Chicago to New Jersey, we took the same route. We stayed in Cleveland, and we had to do 4 charging stops. So the total amount that we had to spend for these charging sessions were as follows. One stop in Indiana for a charging cost of $17.50, one in Ohio for $22.68, 2 stops in Pennsylvania for $17.50 and $8.91. This brings the total charging cost for the return trip to $66.59. Notice that the amount for the return trip was actually lower than what we had to spend when going to Chicago, and I can see 2 reasons for this. Number one is when we went to Chicago and stayed the night in Cleveland, we actually drove around Cleveland City a little bit just to see the city, and then we went for dinner as well, so that ended up using some battery life. On our way back, we just stayed the night in Cleveland. We did not go outside, so that of course saves some battery life there. And then the second reason is the temperature was a lot cooler on our way back, so we had to spend less energy to keep the temperature at 70 degrees inside the cabin. Now if we look at the total charging cost for both directions, the final number comes out to be $147.02. Of course, when we left New Jersey, we had a battery life of 324 miles, and when we got back, it was at 160 miles. So in there was 164 mile worth of battery range that was there from the previous charging session, so we have to incorporate that as well. Let's say we allocate $15 worth of charging for those 164 miles, then the total number for this whole trip comes out to be $162.02. Now let's look at the cost of taking this trip if you were to drive a regular gasoline car. So the total trip was 1,608 miles long. It was 804 miles in each direction. If you were to take this trip in a Toyota Camry, which has a fuel economy of 39 miles per gallon on highways, you will end up spending $200. This is based on gas price, which is US average gas price for that week, and that was $4.87. Of course, there's no comparison between Tesla Model 3 and a Toyota Camry in terms of performance. So if you were to take this exact same trip in a high performance car that gives you about 25 miles per gallon fuel economy, then you will end up spending about $312.45 for this exact same trip. Based on these numbers, Tesla Model 3 will cost you $150 less than what it would cost you to take the exact same trip in a gasoline car that has similar performance. That's all from this video. I hope you got some value out of it, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button.